Are you afraid that if you move to Kansas City, you're gonna end up in another boring cow town? Well, 20 years ago, I probably would agree with you. But now, the city has really come alive and it's on par with a lot of what you would expect in other major cities. Now, the last 20 years, the city has invested so much into the downtown. I remember as a kid, everybody wanted to move further and further and further outside of the city. Now those same people are tired of mowing lawns and they're ready and they're moving closer and closer and closer to all those amenities. So I'm gonna tell you about, again, what's already changed. I'm gonna tell you about what's coming. But before I do that, go ahead, hit that button and ring that bell. That way you're notified every time we bring you one of these videos. And if you're even thinking about moving to Kansas City, go ahead and give us a call, text, or email. We've helped hundreds of people just like you find their perfect spot in our city, and I'd love to help you too. So again, reach out with whatever's convenient for you. And remember, when it comes to moving to Kansas City, all you have to do is point the direction and we'll guide you there. So far this year, Kansas City has stepped into the 21st century. They've opened a world-class international airport and retired their older multi-gate airport. It comes with a mixed bag of emotions. You have some people in the city that are excited to have a single gate terminal, and you have a lot of people who really miss the old airport. Now, I find that people that miss the old airport, they don't do as much traveling as the people that appreciate the new one, but you have to understand why the old airport was unique and why they liked it so much. So if you go back into the 1960s, TWA had its hub here and they wanted it to be their main hub for international flights. They were going to have supersonic flights where you could fly all over the world. So all the roads right around the city are named like Paris Street, Mexico City Avenue. That's because they planned on being able to fly direct from Kansas City to Paris, direct from Kansas City to Mexico City Avenue. And again, they were going to use futuristic supersonic speeds to do it. They wanted to spend a bunch of money and build a futuristic airport. It's actually too expensive and Howard Hughes didn't get it done, but he actually wanted to have like the Jetson sidewalks that were like escalators that moved, you know, like we now have in most airports. But in the 1960s, that was the future. It's too expensive. So they came up with this idea to have multi-terminal gates, and you'd be able to drive right up to the gate and drop somebody off 70 feet and they'd be on their gate. So remember back in that time, you had drive-in movies and you had like Sonic and all these drive-in places. It was all about doing something out of your car, and the airport was designed exactly with that in mind. Now, 9/11 ruined that, of course. So now when you drop somebody off at the gate, they had to walk about 40 feet to a security checkpoint, and then the last 30 feet to their gate. That was the gate they were in, right? But if you had to leave to go eat or do anything, you had to go through security and back again. So the airport really didn't work post 9/11, and we really needed a modern airport that allowed people to have layovers and to spend some time in the airport. So the new airport has 39 gates, a single terminal. It's full of Kansas City restaurants and it's full of Kansas City memorabilia. So even if you were here on a layover, you'd have a great experience tasting the flavors and seeing the sights of Kansas City, even if you never left the airport. Now, I've done a lot of traveling and I've never seen an airport in another city that promotes the city in the way that Kansas City does. And I really think it's going to have a big impact, especially for people that are coming into the city for a quick business meeting or for a quick conference to get a really good taste of what Kansas City is all about. Now, the opening of the Kansas City International Airport could not have been timed better, and it was probably on purpose. And that's because they opened it at the beginning of March, and come late April, the NFL draft came to town. Now, with the NFL draft came 312,000 fans to witness it. 54 million people watched it on TV. What was really cool about that is if you followed any of the chatter and what they were talking about on the shows, people were really surprised to find that Kansas City was no longer a cow town, and they were really excited to see all the stuff that we had done in the last 20 years. I mean, there's a lot of people that visited here a while back, and Kansas City doesn't look the same now. So I saw a lot of people really surprised. And a lot of people that came to town actually were saying that they plan on coming back to visit or would even consider moving here. Now, where they held it at was at the Union Station and the World War I Museum right south of downtown. Now, when I was a kid, Union Station was boarded up. I remember going there for a field trip and they had fences all around it, but we could get to the front steps. And at the front steps, there's a few bullet holes from when some mobsters broke a friend out of jail and a couple cops actually died. Now, I remember that story really well, and I remember the World War I Museum, you really couldn't do anything at it. I also remember about the time I was 10 or 12 that they were talking about revitalizing these, and a lot of people didn't want to spend the money, but I'm glad there were visionaries that saw that this dilapidated downtown needed to be restored, and that somebody needed to invest in it. And because they saw that, we're now able to bring in world-class events like the NFL Draft and like some other events that I'm going to talk about shortly that are coming to town. Again, we needed also that world-class airport so that 312,000 people could come and go in such a short amount of time. So it was super convenient that we had an airport at the time where we needed to cycle 312,000 people through the city in just a few short days. But that's chump change compared to what's actually on its way to Kansas City. You see, in 2026, we're gonna have this little thing called the FIFA World Cup come to town. Now, the FIFA World Cup attracts 5.5 million fans, of which Kansas City hopes to hold 6 or 7 games. Now, the 6 or 7 games will be 101,000 people per game. That's 600 to 700,000 people that are going to be visiting our city. That's a lot of people coming to a small little, podunk cow town in the middle of the Midwest just to watch some soccer. As of January of 2023, marijuana is no longer illegal in the state of Missouri. But if you are going to a dispensary and buying, you don't want to cross state lines because it is still very much illegal on the Kansas side of Kansas City. Now you can buy all the weed you want. Where are you going to smoke it? Well, Smokey River Entertainment is the solution for you. It is an entertainment district devoted to the consumption of marijuana. So they've got stages and basically bars and different areas where they allow you to smoke marijuana freely. They actually just had their grand opening in April. It happened to be on 4/20. Probably not a coincidence there, but it's going to be an exciting thing to watch and see how that plays out here in Kansas City. So far, there was a lot of uproar on one side of the argument that it was going to cause a lot of problems. I personally haven't seen any of that. It's not really any different in Kansas City now, except I guess they can buy their weed legally. Now, if getting high and listening to rap music at a festival isn't your jam, you should check out the new Kansas City Current. So Kansas City Current is an all-women's soccer team coming to town, and they are building the very first stadium ever built for a women's soccer team right now. Now, the stadium is going to be 11,500 occupancy, and it's going to cost $117 million to build. Brittany Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes' wife, is one of the main investors of it, and it's just another thing that the Mahomes have done for Kansas City. Few people know, or maybe a lot of people know, I'm not sure, Patrick Mahomes actually is a co-owner of the Kansas City Royals now, and this stadium will be located right at Riverfront Park between River Market and the East Bottoms, so it's going to be right along the Missouri River. It'll be a really cool addition to the city, hopefully very close to the new Kansas City Royals Stadium that they're also talking about. Now, there's one development that most people in Kansas City don't know about, but I'm actually really excited to see it come into fruition. Pennway Point. It's going to be west of the downtown Crossroads Arts District. It's going to take up 6 acres. It's going to feature a 17-story Ferris wheel, and it's going to be what they call an urban artifact park. So there's a museum that's going to be on site called Lumi, and they're going to have a lot of Kansas City artifacts, and especially they're going to be known for having lots of the neon lights that went to a lot of the different establishments that are famous in Kansas City. Now, part of this park is going to be a tailgate park. In Kansas City, tailgating is a big deal. We are known for having some of the most loyal football fans, and again, tailgating is part of our culture. I imagine this tailgating park is going to be a venue that allows people to tailgate outside of the Arrowhead Stadium, and it's just going to be an extension of the culture that we already have. Now, down in this area, you're going to find a lot of old buildings, or a couple of them at least, and they're going to be repurposed and not knocked over, turned into a mixed use area with restaurants and bars. It's going to be a rooftop patio they're expecting, and that's just going to be another one of the rooftop patio views and the big Ferris wheel that allow you to see the entire city at night. And Kansas City is actually one of the most beautiful and colorful skylines of any city that I've ever seen. Now, if you keep heading west to the state line, you're going to find Rock Island Bridge. It straddles both sides of the state line, right over the river, and it's an old railroad bridge. So they're actually repurposing it instead of knocking it over and making it a full entertainment district that's outdoors, and it's going to be the only one in the world that's developed on a bridge, and it opens spring of 2024. One of the most fun things to do in Kansas City when you're hopping around downtown is to hop on the free Kansas City Streetcar line. Starts down in River Market and runs through the city. It's expected to extend another 3.5 miles south to 51st Street or the UMKC campus. And what's cool about it for the real estate market is you can watch every time that it expands further and further south, that you can look about a 15-minute walk on either side of that line property values go up and development seems to follow. So I would expect that this same line, as they develop it, that you're gonna see the same thing happen. And all these cool venues that keep popping up, they're gonna keep moving further and further south. So if I were moving to the city, one place I'd wanna look at is a place I'd want to invest. Where do I think the market's gonna be moving to? If I wanted to be in an urban environment, I would definitely be looking at buying along that streetcar line. Now, just south of downtown Kansas City is the Power and Light District, and then south of that is the Crossroads District. Right in between is kind of no man's land. It's just this area where the I-670 runs underneath, and then there's a few bridges that cross over and back. Now, the deal is, if you were in Power and Light, you might not really want to cross the road to go to Crossroads. There's just a mental barrier about this dimly lit area and having to cross bridges to go back and forth. So Kansas City is actually proposing what's called the South Loop Project, and it's going to be a park that is suspended above I-670. So it's going to be like the Central Park of downtown Kansas City, but it's only 4.6 acres. It does a couple things. It provides outdoor recreation, an actual park that's near the downtown, especially when you look at all the condos and lofts that are built up around there. There's not really a nearby outdoor park where people can do recreation nearby. So this is going to solve that problem, but for nightlife, I expect it to be well lit, and it's going to be that more of a bridge and a gap in between Power and Light and Crossroads, and really would tie the whole area together. So it's still proposed, and it's a $200 million project, but there's plans that should not take taxpayers' money to do it. In fact, they've already raised $46 million so far. So it's very likely that it's coming, but again, it's still proposed, and we'll see what happens. Now, if you head west from downtown Kansas City, you're gonna come across quite a big bluff. If you go down to the bottom of it, you're gonna find the West Bottoms. The West Bottoms is where the Kansas City stockyards were, so all the cows would come in, and then eventually they came in by train. That's where the meat packing plants were, and anything that was really a factory and being loaded on rail at the time, you would have found down there. So in the 1950s, there was a big flood, and by and large, that area has gone downhill ever since. So the only reason we ever went there when I was a kid, and even pretty much until recent times, was just to go to the haunted houses that were in the old abandoned buildings. It's a beautiful area to go down and see, kind of spooky at night still, but that's all about to change because they are bringing in a major development. It's gonna be a $500 million redevelopment of the area. It's gonna have 1,250 residents brought in, and it's gonna be a live, work, play concept. So it should be really interesting to see what they come up with, and I expect this to be a cornerstone development. So this will be the first step of a larger redevelopment of the entire district. So it'll be, again, really fun to watch what happens down there. It's gonna be exciting to see them save these old buildings and bring back a really cool part of our city. Now, if we're going to talk about all the development in the downtown area, we should really talk about the downtown hotel renaissance that's happened over the last few years. So even locally, when I'm going out downtown, it's not uncommon that we'll just rent a hotel. They're so beautiful and they're a lot of fun, and it's also a lot safer than driving back. So we stay down there all the time. So if you're coming here to explore Kansas City, I highly recommend that you try out one of these hotels and really get a feel of what the city's all about. So some of my favorites are going to be the Hotel Phillips. We stayed there for my birthday this year. They've got a speakeasy in the basement. You do have to have a reservation, and it's a hidden door. You'll have to have a reservation to know how to get in there. There's also a great lobby bar. We spent just as much time there. The Lowe's Hotel is talked about all the time. It's incredibly beautiful. I think the best way to describe it is elegant, and they have a great rooftop patio with a great view of the city. And then also the Hotel Muehlebach just opened. It's been closed for over 40 years. Every president from Roosevelt to Reagan has stayed there. There's a cocktail bar that has piano music every night. It's just an awesome experience. So definitely check that out. Now, if you're even thinking of moving to the Kansas City area, go ahead and reach out to us, call, text, email, whatever's most convenient for you. Just know that we're here to make that transition to Kansas City, just very simple. In fact, we've built a quiz that within 10 questions, based on your personality and based on what you like to do when you're not at work, it's gonna be able to tell you exactly which parts of the city are perfect for you. So we put that link down in the description below, and go ahead and hit that button, ring that bell, and remember, when it comes to moving to Kansas City, all you have to do is point the direction and we'll guide you there.